Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So continuing series at the end of the year. Every year, the Unported Playlist Hall of Fame, where I induct a new class into my own personal Unported Playlist Hall of Fame Best Games of All Time list. If you can't tell already, it's pretty obvious the word is on the screen. We are playing Rambo today. It was released in 2008 by Sega on the Sega Lindbergh. It is absolutely an amazing light gun shooter that has a lot of shades of something like Virtual Cop in it. It is just one of my favorite games of all time because it's over the top, absolutely ridiculous, and because it is Sega and metric crap ton of fun. Before you get far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But obviously right off the top, you can tell exactly what Rambo is expecting of you, and that is to absolutely unload and destroy every bad guy in front of you. If you've ever played any Sega light gun game before, you're going to know exactly how this functions, but it's in the overall storytelling, incorporating the movies, and actually just having all these fun, quick time events with your gun that just work super well contextually within the game. And honestly, this is just Sega doing what they do best in the light gun gaming genre, giving you a ton of fun targets to shoot at and letting you just rip and tear through the entire game. And honestly, Rambo is, in my opinion, one of the best action movie franchises of all time, so combining that with Sega's know-how in the light gun arcade genre, you know you're in for a treat. And because it does follow the narrative of some of the movies, taking select scenes and turning them into levels, if you're familiar with the films, there's definitely going to be a lot for you to love here, and I just absolutely love this game and think it's a hidden gem. And there really aren't that many games that you can call hidden gems from Sega in the arcades, but for some reason, the year of release, maybe being around the 2008 financial crisis, just kept people out of the arcades. Or maybe it's the fact that another Rambo light gun on-rail shooter game came out like 4 years later and was absolute garbage, and if you Google it, you can end up with mixed results and maybe get mistaken thinking that that game that released later on, not by Sega, is this game. And that is just absolutely disappointing because this one is straight up hidden gem gold. The other game is absolute garbage. And I love that they will incorporate scenes from the films to kind of set up the story, or even some of the bosses. You'll see here, you're getting scenes from Rambo in and of itself, and that's going to basically contextualize what you're going to be doing in the next level. And during gameplay, it'll cut between the actual game and the scenes in and of themselves, so you can kind of get even more contextual sense as to what's going on. But I love a lot of the mechanics in the game. Obviously, you have a full auto-fire machine gun, and you're just going to let that rip against your enemies. But in the jungle area here, you're going to get commanders that come out. If you're able to take them down first, you're going to basically ruin the morale of the other fighters, and they're going to become easier to fight. If you leave those commanders alive, they're going to have a lot better aim. But even here, with these quick time events, they are so fun. You're covered in mud, just like you would be in the film, and it's going to give you a reticle that you have to fire on. Some of these have way too much time, some of them don't have enough, so you're never quite sure which one you're going to get. But you'll see here, if we target him correctly and go ahead and take that shot, we have 20 seconds, which is just wild. It's going to be easy. We're going to cut back to a scene from Rambo where he's covered in mud and he drives that knife straight through the opponent's chest. Obviously in the game we shot him with an arrow, which doesn't exactly make 100% sense, but you just kind of have to suspend your disbelief here and go with it, because if you do, you're going to find an absolutely amazing game. And again, because Sega seems to be allergic to giving us a Virtual Cop 4, I feel like this is about as close as you're ever going to get. Sure, it's not in the same franchise, but it's kind of that modern military shooter that Virtual Cop kind of occupies as well, so it does have a little bit of those vibes. And I love all of the different bosses, both the mid bosses as well as the final bosses, giving you such a fun vibe. Trying to take down these two gunboats here while you have to shoot in between the wood of this little shanty boat, it can be quite difficult to cancel it out. And honestly, this game definitely is one that is going to be slightly easier if you bring two players along for the ride. And honestly, any arcade light gun game is always going to be better with a friend next to you. But I just love the wave after wave of enemy that are coming up here. There's so many different bodies that are just going to be rushing you. Some of them are going to be better shots. You're going to get that aiming icon, and you have to pay attention and take down the opponents in the order in which they pose a threat. But the game also has a great soundtrack, 45 seconds, and I'll be right back with more.
Rage mode. Mission. Time's up. Player 1 damage. Top. Player 1 damage. Time's up. Player damage! Ready, go!
The music absolutely works in context of the action on the screen, and I did fail a couple of those events intentionally just so you can see what the difference is between succeeding and failing. Although there is one track in the game which is modern hip-hop that does not fit a Rambo game whatsoever, but it's kind of fun just to hear it in there. And you'll see again, it adhere to the scenes of the film, so you're kind of going to get that exact sort of vibe, but you're actually playing a Rambo movie. I think this game, more so than a lot of other arcade games based on movie franchises, does an amazing job of actually tying in the story of the game into the actual play itself. It just works, and you'll see here now we were just basically mowing down a bunch of dudes in a helicopter. You have to shoot over 100 enemies before you can move on to the next area, and it just absolutely does feel like you are a one-man army named Rambo, because in the films that's exactly what you are. It basically is incorporating the power fantasy from the film of just being an indestructible force of nature into the game itself. Sure, you're going to die a few times, and sure, you're going to take a few continues, but Rambo basically is a one-man machine that's just going to mow through absolute units of soldiers in front of him like it's what he does every single day of the week, and that is always going to be fun. And I love that it is that bright cherry Sega colorway as well. There are going to be some nighttime scenes, but for the most part the game takes place during the day, just like it would be in the movie. So if the scene took place in the daylight, so is the scene in the game. You'll see here we left the enemy base in ruins, but we're not quite done yet, and this might be my favorite part of the entire game, where you have a helicopter battle with another helicopter chasing you down, just like in the films. And if you've never seen any of the Rambo films before, honestly, you don't really need to know anything about them. You can just jump into the game without any prior knowledge, and you're still going to have a ton of fun. And that's always the great thing about a licensed arcade game. You don't always have to have that experience. But you'll see here now, before, when we stabbed the dude in the chest, we had basically 20 seconds to do it. Now trying to knock back the attack helicopter, we have under 2. So the one thing the game might use a little adjustment on is some of the timings in these events, because they are quick time events. Even if it isn't a button prompt, you have to be good on your aim, but it is one of those things that the timing sometimes feels a little bit strange. But as we move into this enemy base here to try to rescue Colonel Troutman, this is probably one of my favorite actual levels in the game outside of that helicopter chase. Just going through this ramshackle base, trying to mow everybody down. You'll see here that we did have a challenge where if you didn't shoot too consistently, you wouldn't alert the enemies, but it is more fun just to absolutely unload that clip and just have everyone running at you. The more enemies to shoot, the better the game feels, and that always just works for me. And this is one of those titles I'm just not sure why it didn't hit. I never hear anybody talk about Rambo from Sega, and it's one of those titles that I think if people played it, they absolutely would love it, but for the most part, anytime I talk about it, people say either I didn't know that existed or I've never checked it out before. But I'm going to do one more scene and soundtrack sample because again, it works so well with the movie clips as well as the gameplay. 35 seconds, and I'll be right back to close out the video with a bit more.
What was that? We've got an intruder!
Shoot!
Now!
I love rage mode as well. If you actually get that meter all the way up and go ahead and activate it, you're going to get complete auto fire with no reload on a stronger weapon, and Rambo is going to be completely invincible the entire fight, and you definitely want to save that up for the right situations. It can be the difference between a life and death. Like you see, I'm using it here, and I was able to destroy all of those rocks that are pretty hard to actually break apart on your standard firearm. But Rambo on the Sega Limburg, to me, is just another example of Sega taking a licensed property and a light gun game, marrying them together and absolutely making a hit. It is a bummer that for some strange reason this game really isn't thought about that much whatsoever, and again, maybe it's just confused with the other Rambo game that came out some years later that was hot dumpster fire garbage. But I am telling you today, if you've never played Rambo before, you 100% owe it to yourself to check it out. You can play it on Lindbergh Loader, you can play it on Techno Parrot, you can play it with something like Gun for IR or Sinden, or if you don't want to spend any money on specialized controls, you can go ahead and just assign the aiming reticle to your mouse and have the left and right clicks function as your trigger and reload if you need it. It is one of those things, the only wrong way to play this game is not to play it in the first place. And it is one of those Sega titles that I just again don't understand why more people don't talk about. But Rambo as a movie franchise is a straight up 10 out of 10, absolutely love it. And Sega taking the movie franchise and turning it into a light gun game just 100% works. But if you have played this game, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. But for me, it's part of my new unported playlist Hall of Fame because I love it. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.